The wind screamed across the scorched wastes like a dying animal. Forge flew low over the blackened ground, his crimson scales reflecting the twin suns that baked this forsaken stretch of Ashmar. He shouldn't have been here. Most dragons avoided this place where the merchant convoys sometimes fell prey to pirates. But Forge had spent the last 30 years avoiding most things that reminded him of life. So what was one more dangerous flight? Smoke rose from wreckage below. Fresh smoke. Forge's ancient instincts stirred despite his desire to simply pass by. He circled lower, his massive wings creating dust devils on the cracked earth. 3 ships lay scattered like broken toys. Their metal hulls were torn open, cargo spilled everywhere. No survivors would be his guess. Pirates didn't leave witnesses. He should leave. He should go back to his mountain and his books and his solitude. But something made him land anyway, his claws sinking into the still warm metal of the largest ship. The archives could wait another hour. They had waited 30 years already. Forge moved through the wreckage with the careful precision of a creature who had seen too much death. Bodies lay everywhere, traders from a dozen worlds all dead. The pirates had been thorough. He felt nothing. He had felt nothing for a long time now. Then he heard it. A sound so small he almost missed it beneath the wind. A whimper. His head snapped toward a cargo container that had split open. Moving faster than he had in years, Forge tore away the remaining metal. Inside, wrapped in emergency thermal blankets, were 2 small forms. His breath caught. A dragon hatchling, barely 2 months old by the size, lay curled around something even smaller, a human infant. The hatchling's scales were the color of dying embers, orange and red and black. Its eyes opened as Forge approached, and it made a weak chirping sound that dragon parents recognized across all worlds. Help. Hungry. Scared. The universal cry of a child. The human baby was silent, but its chest rose and fell. Alive, then. Against all odds alive, Forge stared at them both. The intelligent thing would be to leave them. Dragon hatchlings without parents rarely survived, and human infants needed care he couldn't provide. He should find authorities, send a signal, let someone else handle this problem. He had his own grief to tend to, his own ghosts. But as he watched, the hatchling wrapped its small body tighter around the human baby, sharing what little warmth it had, protecting it. Even in its hunger and fear, the young dragon was protecting the weaker creature. Something cracked inside Forge's chest, something that had been frozen for 3 decades. He reached down carefully, his claw gentle despite its size. The hatchling hissed weakly, trying to defend its companion. Brave little thing? Foolish, but brave. I'm not going to hurt you, Forge rumbled in the dragon tongue. His voice was rusty from disuse. He mostly talked to books these days. Come, both of you. He fashioned a carrying pouch from the thermal blankets and placed both younglings inside. The hatchling bit his claw, but its teeth were too small to pierce his ancient scales. The human baby made a small sound, not quite crying, not quite cooing. Forge launched into the sky with his unexpected cargo. The flight back to the Ember Peaks took 3 hours. 3 hours of feeling the small movements of life against his chest. 3 hours of wondering what insanity had possessed him. His lair was exactly as he left it. Crystals growing from the walls providing soft light. Shelves of data tablets and ancient scrolls. His hoard in the back chamber untouched for decades. And everywhere, the silence of a place where no voice had spoken in far too long. He set the makeshift pouch down gently near his resting stone, which still held heat from the volcanic vents below. The hatchling crawled out immediately, chirping urgently. Hungry, definitely hungry. Forge had food stored for himself. Dried meat, some mineral supplements. He shredded the meat small and offered it. The hatchling devoured it desperately, then looked at the human baby and chirped again. Its companion needed food too. I don't have human food, Forge muttered. He had lived alone too long. Now he was talking to a hatchling who couldn't understand him yet. But the hatchling seemed to understand the tone. It made a distress sound. Forge looked at the human baby. It was waking up now, starting to cry. The sound was strange to his ears, higher pitched than dragon younglings, but the meaning was the same. Hunger, fear, need. He had no idea what human babies ate. Milk of some kind, he remembered from old texts. But what kind? And how to get it? The next 3 days were chaos. Forge flew to the nearest trading post, a rough collection of prefab buildings where merchants from various worlds exchanged goods. He bought human infant formula using gems from his hoard. ignoring the suspicious stares. He bought bottles and blankets and things he didn't know the names for, but the shopkeeper assured him human babies needed. Raising a pet? The Centaurian shopkeeper asked with too much interest. Research. Forge grunted and left before more questions came. Back at the lair, he learned through trial and error how to mix the formula, how to hold the bottle so the baby could drink. The hatchling watched everything with intelligent eyes, learning. When Forge fed the human baby, the hatchling would curl around it, keeping it warm. When he fed the hatchling, it would chirp at the baby as if explaining what food was. Forge told himself this was temporary. He would find proper homes for them both. Dragon clans would take the hatchling. Human colonies would take the baby. He just needed time to locate them. But when he contacted the dragon clans, they refused. A sole survivor hatchling was considered unlucky, touched by death. None would take it. And when he discreetly inquired about human orphanages, they said the same thing. Too fragile for dragon territory. The environmental systems needed were too expensive. No one wanted the trouble, so they stayed. Days became weeks. The hatchling grew stronger, started trying to glide around the lair. The human baby started making different sounds that might become words someday, and Forge found himself giving them names, which was foolish because names meant attachment. But he did it anyway. The hatchling he named Cinder for the color of its scales. The human baby he named Lily, after a flower his mate had once shown him from an Earth database, delicate but surprisingly strong. 3 months passed, then 6, then a year. Forge stopped looking for other homes. He stopped pretending this was temporary. Against all logic and his own better judgment, he had become a parent again. Not to his own species, not even to one species, but to 2 small creatures who needed him. On quiet nights, when Cinder and Lily slept curled together near his resting stone, Forge would look at them and feel something he thought had died with his mate in his own clutch. Not quite happiness, not yet, but something close to it. Something like purpose. Something like hope. The archives could wait. He had more important work now. 5 years had painted the mountain lair with sounds Forge never imagined hearing again. Laughter echoed off crystal walls. Small footsteps pattered across stone floors. And sometimes in the early morning, he would wake to find a tiny human child curled against his side and a young dragon sprawled across his tail. Lily had grown into a wiry 6-year-old with sun-darkened skin and hair that stuck up in all directions. She could climb the sheer cliff faces outside the lair like a mountain goat, her small fingers finding holds that shouldn't exist. She spoke dragon tongue with a strange accent but growing confidence, and she had recently started teaching herself to read the old texts in Forge's archive. Her pronunciation was terrible, but her determination was admirable. Cinder had become the size of a large horse, his ember-colored scales now gleaming with proper nutrition and care. He could fly well enough to hunt small game in the valleys below, though he always brought half his catch back for Lily. His fire breath was developing nicely, controlled and precise rather than the wild blasts most young dragons produced. Forge suspected that came from watching how carefully fire needed to be used around his human sister. Sister. That's what they called each other now. Clutchmates in the dragon way, though biology said otherwise. Forge, look what I found. Lily came running into the main chamber, her bare feet slapping against stone. She held up a broken data tablet, waving it like a trophy. It's got human letters on it, but I can't read all of them yet. Can you help? Forge looked up from the star charts he'd been cataloging. After lessons. You still need to practice your fire safety drills. But I already know fire safety, Lily protested. Cinder's breath is hot, don't touch the blue part, and always have water nearby. And what do you do if your clothes catch fire? Stop, drop, and roll. Then yell for Cinder to stop breathing on me. She grinned, showing the gap where her front tooth had fallen out last week. But that only happened once, and it was an accident. Cinder pushed his head through the archway that connected to his sleeping chamber. He made an apologetic rumbling sound, smoke wisps curling from his nostrils. I know it was an accident, Forge said patiently, but accidents are why we practice safety. Now go, both of you. Fire drills, then hunting practice for Cinder, then we'll look at your tablet. They went, though Lily made exaggerated groaning sounds all the way out. Forge listened to them arguing playfully about whose turn it was to carry the practice torches, and he felt that strange warmth in his chest again, the one that had been growing stronger each year, but the warmth was always mixed with worry. Lily was human, She needed things he struggled to provide. Her diet required vegetables and fruits he had to fly hours to purchase. She needed clothes that fit properly, not the makeshift things he'd been creating from blankets. She needed education about her own species, culture, history, things he couldn't teach, and there were other concerns. Last month, a merchant at the trading post had asked too many questions about why a dragon kept buying human children's supplies. Forge had stopped going to that particular post, but word traveled. Sooner or later, someone would investigate. The afternoon passed in the comfortable routine they'd developed. Cinder practiced hunting techniques while Lily worked on her climbing skills. Then they both helped Forge reorganize a section of the archive, with Lily creating what she called a card catalog system that actually made finding specific texts much easier. See, you put all the history ones together, and all the science ones together, she explained, moving data tablets into new arrangements. Then you make a list of what's where and you never lose anything. Humans are strange creatures, Forge observed. Dragons remember where everything is. You spent 3 weeks looking for that treaty document last month, Lily pointed out. That was different. Someone had moved it. You moved it. I watched you. Cinder made a rumbling sound that might have been dragon laughter. The peaceful afternoon shattered when a shadow fell across the lair entrance. A dragon landed on the ledge outside, larger than Forge, with scales the color of old iron. Ridge, an elder from the northern clans. Forge's heart sank. Forge, Ridge called, his voice formal and cold. We need to speak. Forge moved to block the entrance, keeping his body between Ridge and the interior of the lair. Elder Ridge, this is unexpected. Is it? Ridge's eyes flicked past Forge, landing on Lily, who had frozen in place. A data tablet clutched to her chest. Then to Cinder, who had moved protectively in front of his sister. Or did you think you could hide this forever? Hide what? Forge kept his voice neutral. Don't insult me. The entire territory knows you're raising a human child, and corrupting a young dragon in the process. Ridge's tone dripped with disdain. This is unnatural. It violates our oldest traditions. Lily made a small sound. Cinder's scales began to heat up, smoke rising from his body, a young dragon's instinctive response to threat. My household is my own business, Forge said quietly. Not when it affects the clan's reputation, not when it spreads ideas that could undermine everything we are. Ridge stepped closer. You will bring the child and the youngling before the Dragon Council. They will decide what's to be done, and if I refuse, then you will be declared rogue, stripped of your place in the archives and removed from clan territory. The child will be sent to human authorities. The youngling will be placed with a proper dragon family. Ridge's eyes were hard. Don't make this difficult, Forge. You're old, but you're not so old I couldn't enforce this myself if needed. Forge felt Cinder tense behind him. The young dragon was strong for his age, but no match for an elder. And fighting would only make things worse. When? Forge asked. Tomorrow at sundown. The council chamber at High Peak. Ridge spread his wings. And Forge? I suggest you prepare them both for separation. The council will not allow this mockery to continue. He launched into the air, leaving silence behind. Forge turned to find Lily crying quietly, tears streaming down her face. Cinder stood beside her, his body trembling with anger and fear. Are they going to take us away? Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Forge wanted to lie, to tell her everything would be fine. But he'd never lied to either of them, and he wouldn't start now. They're going to try, he said, but we won't let them separate us without a fight. We're a family. That means something. What can we do? Cinder asked in the dragon tongue, his young voice cracking. Tomorrow we go before the council, and we show them that what we have here isn't wrong. It's just different. Forge looked at both of them. But tonight we prepare. Lily, I need you to practice your dragon tongue speech. Cinder, we need to discuss how you'll present yourself, and both of you need to understand something. They looked at him with identical expressions of hope and fear. No matter what happens tomorrow, you are my children. Both of you, and I will fight for you with everything I have. He felt his voice roughen with emotion. You are loved. You are wanted, and you are worth fighting for. Remember that, whatever the council says. Lily ran to him, wrapping her small arms around his foreleg as far as they would reach. Cinder pressed his head against Forge's side. And in the fading light of the twin suns, an old dragon held his impossible family close and hoped that love would be enough to overcome tradition. Tomorrow they would face the Dragon Council. Tomorrow they might lose everything, but tonight they were together, and that was worth more than all the treasure in his hoard. High Peak lived up to its name. The ancient meeting place of the Dragon Council sat at the summit of Ashmar's tallest mountain, where the air was thin enough to make even dragons work for breath. Humans needed oxygen masks just to survive up here. Lily wore one now, the clear mask covering half her small face as she rode on Cinder's back. The young dragon climbed the final steps carved into stone, following Forge toward the massive chamber ahead. 7 dragons waited inside, arranged in a semicircle around a flat stone platform. Their scales represented every color of fire, from deep crimson to white-hot blue. These were the eldest of the clans, some old enough to remember when humans first discovered spaceflight. Their eyes tracked the trio as they entered. Ridge sat among them, his expression satisfied. Next to him was an ancient dragon whose scales had faded to ash gray, so old that younger dragons whispered she remembered the founding of Ashmar itself. Smoke, they called her, though few knew her true name. Forge of the Ember Peaks, Ridge began formally. You stand before the council to answer for your violation of our most sacred traditions. You have taken an alien child into your care and raised it among dragons. You have allowed this alien influence to corrupt a young dragon's development. What defense do you offer? Forge stepped onto the platform, his head held high. Cinder and Lily followed, though the human child trembled despite her brave face. I offer truth, Forge said clearly. 5 years ago I found 2 orphans in the scorched wastes, a dragon hatchling and a human infant, sole survivors of a pirate raid. I brought them home. I raised them. They are my family. Family! Ridge spat the word. You mock the very concept. Dragons raise dragons, each species to their own. This has been our way for thousands of years. Your way has left one child dead, Forge replied quietly. Or have you forgotten? You refused to take Cinder when I asked. You called him unlucky, touched by death. Every clan I contacted said the same. Murmurs rippled through the council. Ridge's scales darkened. The human authorities would have taken the girl, another elder said. I asked them too. They said she was too fragile for dragon territory, too expensive to accommodate, too much trouble. Forge's voice remained steady, so I kept them both. And they have thrived. Thrived. Ridge gestured dismissively. The child cannot even breathe our air without assistance. She is weak, dependent, and the youngling has been poisoned by alien thinking. Look at him, standing there like a pet, not a proper dragon. Cinder's scales heated with anger, but he held his position, just as they'd practiced. May I speak? Lily's voice was small but clear. The translation device Forge had modified, allowing her words to rumble in dragon tongue through the chamber. The council members looked surprised. Smoke leaned forward with interest. A human child wishes to address the council? Ridge's tone dripped with mockery. This should be entertaining. Lily stepped forward, removing her oxygen mask. Forge started forward in alarm, but she held up a hand. She could manage a few minutes without it if she breathed carefully. Honored elders, she began in dragon tongue, her pronunciation careful. I know I am strange to you. Weak, small, not made for this world. She paused, gathering breath. But Forge saved me. Cinder kept me warm when I would have frozen. They taught me, protected me, loved me. Is this wrong? It is unnatural, Ridge insisted. Why? Lily pulled out a data tablet from the bag on Cinder's harness. I have spent 5 years in Forge's archive. I have read your histories. Dragons have traded with other species for centuries. You have alliances, peace treaties, trade agreements. You interact with aliens every day, but you cannot love them? She tapped the tablet and a holographic display appeared above it. Charts and graphs organized with the clean efficiency of a human mind. These are the archive access logs for the past 5 years. Before I came, the archives were consulted an average of 12 times per year. Since I created the new organization system, they have been accessed over 300 times per year. Knowledge that was lost has been found. Treaties that were forgotten have been recovered. I have helped preserve your history and I'm only 6 years old. Smoke made an approving rumble. Ridge looked furious. And what of the youngling? Another elder asked. What has this human influence done to him? Cinder stepped forward. I can answer that, honored elder. Lily has taught me to think differently, to solve problems in new ways. Watch. He moved to the chamber's edge where a traditional puzzle sat. It was a dragon test of intelligence, a complex arrangement of heated stones that needed to be moved into a specific pattern using only fire breath and claw. Most young dragons took weeks to solve it. Cinder studied it for 30 seconds. Then he used a technique no dragon had tried before. Instead of moving the stones directly, he heated the metal frame supporting them, causing it to expand in specific places. The stones shifted into perfect alignment in under 3 minutes. Silence filled the chamber. "This is not how it's meant to be solved," Ridge protested. "But it works," Cinder replied. "Lily showed me that there is always more than one solution. That being different means seeing possibilities others miss. Is this corruption, or is it evolution?" "The boy speaks wisdom beyond his years," Smoke said, her ancient voice quiet but carrying weight. "I have watched your family from a distance, Forge. I wanted to see what would develop before speaking, and what I have seen fascinates me." She rose, her great age apparent in every movement. "Traditions exist to protect us, but traditions that cannot bend will break. The galaxy changes around us. New species emerge. Old boundaries blur. We can either adapt or become fossils." Her eyes swept the council. "This child has contributed more to our archives than most dragons twice her age. This youngling shows abilities we never knew dragons could develop. Perhaps what we see here is not corruption, but possibility." "You would throw away thousands of years of tradition for an experiment?" Ridge demanded. "I would honor tradition by allowing it to grow," Smoke replied. "But I am only one voice. The council must decide together." The debate lasted hours. Lily had to put her oxygen mask back on, sitting quietly beside Cinder while dragons argued about their fate. Some sided with Ridge, insisting that species boundaries were sacred. Others sided with Smoke, seeing potential in what Forge had created. Finally, as the twin suns began to set, Smoke called for a vote. "Those who would separate this family, show your agreement." 3 dragons, including Ridge, raised their claws. Those who would allow them to remain together, 4 claws rose. Smoke's was among them. Ridge snarled in frustration but could not argue with the majority. "There is a condition," Smoke said, looking at Forge. "You have 10 years to prove this model works. Show us that cross-species families can benefit not just themselves but all of society. If you succeed, we will formally recognize such arrangements. If you fail, the council reserves the right to intervene." "We accept," Forge said immediately. "Then it is decided." Smoke's gaze softened as it fell on Lily and Cinder. "Go home, little family. You have work ahead of you." Outside, as they descended from High Peak, Lily finally allowed herself to cry, this time from relief. Cinder pressed against her gently, his warmth more than physical. "We did it," she whispered. "We did," Forge agreed. "But now comes the harder part. We have to prove to everyone that we were worth saving." Cinder spread his wings, catching the evening wind. "Then we'll prove it. Together." And as they flew home through the darkening sky, Forge felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Not just hope, but confidence. His family was small and strange and went against every tradition, but they were strong. They would find a way. They had to. The galaxy was watching now. 8 years changed everything. The small lair in the Ember Peaks had grown into something Forge never anticipated. Additional chambers had been carved into the mountain, equipped with environmental controls for different species. What started as 1 dragon, 1 human, and 1 dragonling had become a sanctuary for dozens of unlikely families. Lily was 14 now, tall for her age and lean from years of climbing mountains and running through valleys. She wore practical clothes designed for extreme temperatures, and her hair was pulled back in a braid that kept it out of her face while she worked. She spoke 7 languages fluently and could read ancient texts from 12 different civilizations. Right now, she stood in what they called the Translation Center, helping a Centaurian parent understand their adopted silicate child's dietary needs. "They don't eat like we do," Lily explained patiently in Centaurian standard. "Their bodies absorb minerals directly through their skin. See this chart? These are the mineral baths they need twice a day. I'll show you how to prepare them." The Centaurian father, a tall being with 4 arms and concerned eyes, relaxed visibly. "I was so worried I was doing it wrong. The child has been quiet lately. That's normal for silicates when they're not getting enough copper. We'll fix that." Lily smiled the same reassuring smile Forge had given her countless times. "You're doing great. Being worried means you care." In the adjacent chamber, Cinder was demonstrating rescue techniques to a group of young dragons and their various adopted siblings. He had grown massive, his ember scales gleaming like polished metal. His wings could generate enough lift to carry 3 human-sized beings. More impressive was his mind, sharp and creative in ways that made other dragons uncomfortable and humans excited. "The key is thinking beyond your first instinct," Cinder explained, his voice deep and resonant now. "Your instinct says grab the trapped person and pull. But what if pulling makes things worse? What if the debris is unstable? You have to assess, plan, then act." He demonstrated with a mock rescue scenario, using his fire breath not to destroy obstacles but to carefully weld metal supports, creating safety before attempting extraction. The watching dragons took notes, their minds opening to possibilities they'd never considered. Forge watched from the archive, now expanded and organized with such efficiency that scholars from 3 systems came to study their methods. His scales had dulled with age and his movements were slower, but his eyes were bright with pride. What they had built here was remarkable. It was also attracting attention. A ship landed on the lower platform as the twin suns reached their peak. Military design sleek and intimidating, Forge's chest tightened. He'd been expecting something like this but hoped for more time. The man who emerged wore a Federation military uniform, his bearing stiff and formal. General Stone, according to the identification beacon his ship broadcast. He looked around the transformed mountain with calculating eyes. Lily met him at the entrance, Cinder at her side. It was their job now to handle visitors while Forge supervised the sanctuary operations. "General Stone," Lily greeted him in perfect Federation standard. "Welcome to the Integration Sanctuary. How can we help you?" Stone studied her with unsettling intensity. "You're Lily, the human raised by dragons. I've read reports about you. Quite remarkable. Thank you." Her tone was carefully neutral. Forge had taught her to be wary of compliments from strangers. "I'm here to discuss opportunities," Stone continued. "The Federation has taken notice of your unique situation. Your abilities, your companion's capabilities. We believe you could both serve a greater purpose." "We already serve a purpose," Cinder rumbled. "We help families like ours. Admirable, certainly. But small scale." Stone gestured broadly. "Imagine what you could do with proper resources, training, support. The Federation could use individuals who bridge species boundaries. For diplomatic missions, rescue operations, perhaps even military applications." The last phrase hung in the air like a threat. "Military applications," Lily repeated slowly. "You want us to be soldiers. I want you to be assets. The galaxy is not always peaceful. Having operatives who combine dragon strength with human strategic thinking could save lives." Stone's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, this would come with significant benefits. Funding for your sanctuary, official recognition, protection." "Protection from what?" Cinder asked. "From those who might question the legality of your operations. Unauthorized settlement of multiple species on dragon territory. Unregulated cross-species adoption. These things can be overlooked with proper sponsorship. Or they can be investigated thoroughly." There it was, the threat beneath the offer. "Cooperate or face consequences." Lily exchanged glances with Cinder. Years of living together meant they could communicate with tiny gestures. His slight head tilt. Her barely perceptible nod. "We need time to consider," Lily said. "This is not a decision we can make without consultation." "Of course. Take a week. But understand this offer won't remain open indefinitely." Stone handed her a data chip, my contact information, and some materials about what we're proposing. "I think you'll find it interesting reading." After he left, Lily and Cinder brought the data chip to Forge. The old dragon studied it with growing alarm. "He's not offering opportunity. He's offering ownership," Forge said grimly. Lily had already begun analyzing the data. Her fingers flew across multiple screens. Human coding skills allowing her to dig deeper than Stone probably expected. "There's more here than he showed us." "Encrypted files. Give me an hour." She worked in intense silence while Cinder paced and Forge worried. When she finally looked up, her face was pale. "They want to replicate us," she said quietly. "Not hire us. Replicate us. There are research proposals here for genetic modification, creating dragon-human hybrids, using us as templates for breeding programs. They want to make soldiers from the ground up." Cinder's scales heated with rage. "They see us as experiments." "They see us as weapons," Lily corrected. "Or rather, as the blueprints for weapons." Forge felt old rage stirring. "We need to act carefully. Stone has power. The Federation has more. If we refuse directly, they might take what they want by force. What if we don't refuse directly? Lily's eyes had that look she got when solving complex problems. What if we expose what they're really planning? Not to Stone, to the Federation Council, to the public. Make it impossible for them to act without massive backlash. That's dangerous, Forge warned. So is doing nothing. Lily pulled up communication channels. I've spent 8 years building relationships with scholars, diplomats, journalists from dozens of worlds. People who believe in what we're doing here. What if we show them this? Show everyone that the military wants to weaponize interspecies families. They'll deny it, Cinder said, not if we have proof, and we do. Stone gave it to us himself. Lily's fingers were already moving, copying files, preparing packets of information. By the time he realizes what we're doing, it'll be too late to stop the spread, Forge considered. It was risky. But Lily was right. Doing nothing meant surrendering, and he had not kept his family safe for 8 years just to hand them over to become someone's experiment. Do it, he said, but carefully. We need allies in place before Stone knows what hit him. Over the next 3 days, Lily worked tirelessly. She sent carefully crafted messages to trusted contacts. Journalists received encrypted files. Diplomats got summaries of the military's plans. Federation Council members found detailed reports waiting in their secure inboxes. She built a web of information that would be impossible to suppress. When Stone's week was up and he returned for an answer, he found something unexpected. A crowd. Journalists, diplomats, activists from a dozen worlds all gathered at the sanctuary. Cameras pointed at him as he stepped off his ship. Lily stood at the center, data tablets in hand, Cinder beside her like a guardian. Forge watched from above, ready to intervene if needed. General Stone, Lily said clearly, her voice carrying. We've reviewed your offer, and we've shared it with others who have the right to know what the Federation military plans for interspecies families. Would you like to comment on your genetic modification proposals? Stone's face went rigid. His hand moved toward his communicator, but it was too late. The information was everywhere already. His secret plans exposed for the galaxy to see. You have made a grave mistake, he said quietly. No, Lily replied. We made the right choice. Families are not weapons. Children are not experiments. And we will not be silent while you try to turn what we are into something we're not. The confrontation ended with Stone retreating under the weight of public scrutiny. But Lily knew this wasn't over. They had made an enemy, a powerful one, and eventually he would try again. 3 months of uneasy peace shattered with the sound of ships entering atmosphere. Not 1 or 2, but a full Federation fleet, 30 vessels strong, descending toward the Ember Peaks like a swarm of metal insects. Alarms blared throughout the sanctuary as automated systems detected the military signatures. Lily ran from the translation center where she'd been working, her heart hammering. Cinder was already airborne, circling the mountain, counting ships and calculating odds. Forge emerged from his chamber, moving faster than his old body should allow, placing himself between the sanctuary and the approaching fleet. The other families evacuated to the deeper caves as planned. Dozens of beings, dragon and otherwise, parents and children who'd found refuge here, now seeking shelter from whatever came next. Lily had hoped their preparations would never be needed. She'd been wrong. General Stone's voice boomed through external speakers on the lead ship. By authority of the Federation Security Council, this facility is hereby designated a restricted research site. All inhabitants are ordered to submit to immediate evaluation and relocation. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. This is Dragon territory, Forge roared back, his voice still powerful enough to shake Stone. You have no authority here. Dragon territory that houses unauthorized interspecies settlements. We have documents declaring this a health and safety violation. You will comply or we will make you comply. The fleet began to land, forming a perimeter around the mountain. Soldiers emerged, carrying weapons designed to subdue without killing. They wanted specimens, not corpses. Lily's mind raced. Stone had maneuvered around their exposure of his plans by reframing this as a safety issue. Clever. Terrible, but clever. She pulled out her communication device, sending emergency broadcasts to every contact she had. Help. Being attacked. Coordinates attached. But help would take time they didn't have. Cinder landed beside her, his scales radiating heat from anger and stress. We can't fight a fleet. Even with all the dragons in the sanctuary, we're outnumbered. We don't need to fight, Lily said, her fingers flying across her tablet. We need to stall. and expose what's really happening here. She activated every camera in the sanctuary, every recording device, every communication relay. Then she hacked into the fleet's own systems, using techniques she'd learned from 8 years of studying multiple technologies. Within seconds, she was broadcasting live on every major news network in the sector. The galaxy watched as Federation soldiers advanced on a mountain sanctuary full of families, watched as dragons positioned themselves protectively around smaller beings, watched as a teenage human girl stood between an old dragon and an approaching army. "My name is Lily," she said into the cameras, her voice steady despite her fear. "I am 14 years old. I was orphaned as an infant and raised by the dragon you see behind me. His name is Forge. He saved my life. He gave me a home. He taught me that family isn't about species or biology. It's about love." Stone's face appeared on multiple screens trying to cut into her broadcast. "This is unauthorized. Shut down those cameras immediately." But the cameras kept rolling. Lily had routed them through systems he couldn't access without destroying the mountain itself. "General Stone wants to take us away," Lily continued. "He says it's for safety. But I have files, communications, plans that show what he really wants. He wants to study us, replicate us, turn interspecies families into military projects. And when we refused to cooperate, he came with an army." She held up her tablet, displaying documents that appeared on split screens for viewers across the galaxy. Research proposals, genetic modification plans, budget allocations for breeding programs. Everything Stone thought was buried now exposed in real time. "We are not experiments," Cinder's voice added, deep and resonant. "We are not weapons. We are simply children who were given a chance to live." "Is that a crime?" The soldiers hesitated, looking uncomfortable. Some lowered their weapons. This wasn't what they'd signed up for. Taking families from their homes on live broadcast while the galaxy watched. Stone's voice crackled with fury. "I order you to advance. Take them into custody. Now." But before anyone could move, something remarkable happened. Ships began to appear in the sky. Not military vessels, but civilian craft. Journalists who'd been monitoring the broadcasts. Diplomats who'd been alerted by Lily's emergency messages. And dragons. Dozens of dragons from clans across Ashmar, responding to an ancient distress call that Forge had finally, reluctantly sent. Old Smoke was among them, her ash-gray scales catching sunlight as she landed between the fleet and the sanctuary. Other dragon elders flanked her. They faced the Federation soldiers with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. "You will not take these families," Smoke said, her ancient voice carrying more authority than any military rank. "This is dragon territory and we protect our own. All of our own, regardless of species." "This is a Federation matter," Stone insisted, but his voice had lost confidence. Too many witnesses. Too many powerful beings standing against him. The political calculation had shifted. Then Forge collapsed. One moment he stood strong, the next his legs buckled. He fell with a crash that shook the ground. His breathing labored, his eyes losing focus. The stress, the fear, the years of age all catching up at once. His hearts were failing. Lily screamed and ran to him, throwing her arms around his massive head. "No, no, no. Stay with me. Please stay with me." Cinder was there instantly, pressing against Forge's side, making desperate keening sounds. The old dragon had raised them both, protected them, given them everything. He couldn't leave, not now. Not like this. Forge's eyes found Lily's. "I'm sorry," he whispered in dragon tongue. "I wanted to see you grown. Both of you. You will," Lily insisted, tears streaming down her face. "You have to. I can't do this without you." Something strange began to happen. Where Lily touched Forge's scales, they began to glow softly. Her years of exposure to dragonfire, to the unique environment of the lair, had changed her biology in subtle ways that even she didn't fully understand. And Cinder, bonded to her since infancy, created a circuit of energy between them. They were sharing life force. Not deliberately, not with any training, but instinctively, 3 beings who'd become so intertwined that their very essences recognized each other. The glow spread, encompassing all 3 of them. Forge's breathing steadied. Color returned to his scales. His eyes cleared, focusing on his children with wonder. The watching crowd, soldiers and dragons and journalists alike, stood in stunned silence. They had just witnessed something that shouldn't be possible. Something that suggested interspecies bonds went deeper than anyone had imagined. General Stone looked at the scene and knew he'd lost. He couldn't order an assault now. Not with this many witnesses. Not after what they'd just seen. Whatever report he filed would be buried under public outrage. Stand down, he ordered his soldiers quietly, then louder. The Federation will review this matter through proper diplomatic channels. We will withdraw for now. As the fleet began to lift off, Smoke approached. She looked at Forge, still surrounded by his children, then at the assembled dragons and families. The council will meet again, she announced, not to decide if these families should exist, but to determine how we can support them. What we have witnessed today proves that the bonds between species are real, powerful, and worth protecting. Let those who doubt see this and reconsider. In the days that followed, everything changed. The broadcast had been seen by billions across the galaxy. Public opinion shifted overwhelmingly in favor of the sanctuary. The Federation issued a formal apology and recalled General Stone. Smoke and the Dragon Council officially recognized interspecies families as legitimate and valuable. But more than that, offers began pouring in. Resources, funding, support from worlds that wanted to create their own integration programs. What had started as one dragon saving 2 orphans had become a movement. Forge recovered fully, though the incident had reminded them all that time was limited. He was old and even shared life force couldn't grant immortality. But as he watched Lily and Cinder coordinate with new arrivals, organizing the expansion of the sanctuary into something even greater, he knew his legacy was secure. They had proven that different species could not just coexist but become family, that love transcended biology, that the galaxy was ready for something new, and that a lonely old dragon's decision to save 2 orphans could change everything. 5 years later, the mountain was no longer just a mountain. The Forge Integration Institute, as it was officially named, had grown into something resembling a small city carved into the Ember Peaks. Crystalline structures housed environmental systems for 100 different species. Landing platforms accommodated vessels from across the galaxy. And at the center of it all, the original lair remained, preserved as a reminder of where everything began. Lily was 19 now, confident and capable in ways that would have amazed her 6-year-old self. She wore formal robes today, embroidered with symbols from dozens of cultures because today was special. Today was goodbye. Forge had died peacefully 3 nights ago in his sleep, surrounded by the family he'd built. He'd lived to see the Institute flourish, to witness the first graduating class of interspecies mediators, to know that his impossible choice had reshaped the galaxy. He'd died content, which was more than most beings could hope for. The memorial ceremony drew thousands. Dragons filled the sky, their formation flights creating patterns of honor. Ships from every Federation world attended. Diplomats and leaders paying respects to the dragon who'd changed everything. And families. Dozens of interspecies families who'd found homes because Forge had proven it was possible, gathered to say thank you. Lily stood at the center of it all, composed despite the grief that threatened to break her. Cinder stood beside her, massive and magnificent, his ember scales catching the light of the twin suns. They would get through this together as they'd gotten through everything. Old Smoke spoke first, her voice carrying across the assembled masses. Forge was my friend for over a century. I watched him lose everything and retreat into isolation. I watched him find 2 orphans and rediscover purpose. And I watched him build something greater than himself. He showed us that tradition and progress need not be enemies. That love can bridge any divide. We honor him not just for what he did, but for what he taught us all. Representatives from the Federation spoke. Diplomats shared stories of conflicts resolved using methods developed at the Institute. Families Forge had personally helped stood and told their stories. By the time Lily was invited to speak, the sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that matched Forge's scales. She walked to the memorial stone, a massive crystal that held an image of Forge with his young children clutched close. Her hands trembled as she touched it. I don't remember my birth parents, Lily began, her voice amplified for all to hear. I was too young when they died. The first memories I have are of warmth, of safety, of a rumbling voice that told me everything would be okay. That was Forge. She paused, gathering strength. He didn't have to save me. I was just another orphan, another problem, another mouth to feed. But he saw something worth saving. Not because I was special, but because I was alive and needed help. That's who he was. Cinder moved closer, his presence steadying her. Before he died, Forge told me something. Lily continued. He said that he'd spent 30 years mourning what he'd lost. And then he'd spent the rest of his life celebrating what he'd found. He said that grief and joy aren't opposites. They're two sides of the same love. We grieve because we loved. We celebrate because that love created something lasting. She looked out at the crowd, at the impossible mix of species and cultures that had gathered here. The Forge Institute will continue, not as a memorial but as a living testament to what he believed. That family isn't defined by biology. That different can mean stronger. That the galaxy is better when we build bridges instead of walls. Later, after the crowds had dispersed and only close family remained, Lily found herself in the old archive, the one where Forge had kept his most precious possessions. Cinder squeezed through the doorway, barely fitting now with his adult size. "He left us something," Cinder said, pointing to a sealed container with their names on it. Inside were two items. For Cinder, a scale from Forge's mate lost so long ago, a reminder that grief doesn't mean forgetting and that honoring the past can coexist with building the future. For Lily, a data file. She opened it with shaking hands. It contained everything about her biological parents. Not just names and dates, but recordings, research logs, personal messages. Her mother had been a xenobiologist studying dragon culture. Her father was an engineer who'd designed the first human-compatible environmental systems for extreme worlds. They'd loved each other. They'd loved her. And they'd died trying to protect a merchant convoy from pirates, giving others time to escape. The last entry in the file was Forge's own voice, recorded just days before his death. "Dear Lily, by the time you see this, I'll be gone. I've kept these records for you since the day we met. I wanted you to know where you came from. Your parents were brave, intelligent, and kind. You have their best qualities. But I also want you to know something else." A pause, the sound of ancient breathing. "You are my daughter. Biology didn't make that true. Choice did, yours and mine. The day I decided to keep you and every day after when you decided to stay. That's what makes family real. Not blood but choice, not species but love." Tears streamed down Lily's face. "I know," she whispered to the recording. "I've always known." Cinder wrapped his tail around her gently. "What do we do now?" Lily wiped her eyes, looking at the records of her birth parents, then at the archive Forge had built, then out the window at the institute that had grown from one dragon's impossible choice. "We keep going. We honor him by continuing his work." She stood, new determination in her posture. "And we start right now. There's something we need to do." The next morning, alarms sounded from the detection grid. A ship had crashed in the scorched wastes. The exact same location where Forge had found them 19 years ago. Lily and Cinder flew there together, Lily riding on her brother's back like she had 1,000 times before. The crash site was small, a personal vessel broken on the rocks. Survivors were unlikely, but they checked anyway, because that's what Forge would have done. In the wreckage, they found two children clinging to each other. A young dragon, maybe 3 months old with scales the color of morning frost, and wrapped in its protective embrace. A small centaurian child, barely a year old by the look of it. The dragon hatchling hissed weakly at their approach, trying to defend its companion despite exhaustion and injury. The centaurian child was unconscious but breathing. Lily met Cinder's eyes. In that moment, no words were needed. They both knew what came next. "We're taking them home," Lily said softly, carefully extracting both children from the wreckage. The dragon hatchling tried to bite her, but she'd been bitten by dragons before. She knew how to handle frightened children. As they flew back to the institute, Lily felt something settle into place. Forge's story had ended, but the story of what he'd built continued. She and Cinder would raise these children. They would show them what interspecies family meant, and those children would grow up to help others. The cycle continued. The legacy lived on years past. Lily eventually took a position as Federation Ambassador for Interspecies Relations, traveling the galaxy but always returning home to the Ember Peaks. Cinder established the first mixed-method Dragon Academy, teaching young dragons that adaptation was strength, not weakness. The two children they'd rescued, named Snow and Petal, grew up to become mediators themselves. The Institute expanded to other worlds. What started on one mountain became a galaxy-wide network. Interspecies families became common, then normal, then celebrated. The old fears and prejudices didn't disappear, but they faded, pushed back by evidence that different could mean beautiful. Eventually, they built a space station, neutral territory where any species could meet, negotiate, find common ground. They named it Forge Memorial Station, and placed a statue in its heart. An old dragon with two small children tucked against his side, frozen in crystal for eternity. Lily visited that statue on the anniversary of Forge's death every year. Even when she was old herself, hair gray and movements slow, she came. And she would place her hand on the crystal dragon and whisper the words he'd once told her. Family isn't made by blood or species. It's made by fire. The trials we endure together, the warmth we share in cold times, and the light we carry forward for others to see. On a distant world, in a sector that had once been closed to outsiders, a family gathered for dinner, a silicate parent, a dragon parent, and their adopted human child. The child asked about the statue they'd seen at Forge Memorial Station during their recent trip. The parents told the story of a lonely dragon who'd saved two orphans, who'd defied tradition to create family, who'd changed the galaxy not through war or conquest but through love. The child listened with wide eyes. Did they really do all that? They did, the silicate parent confirmed. And that's why we can be a family today, because they proved it was possible. Later, after the child was asleep, the two parents stood on their balcony, looking at the stars. Ships passed overhead, carrying beings of every imaginable species. Some were families like theirs. Others were on their way to become families. Do you think Forge knew? The dragon parent asked. How much would change? I think he hoped, the silicate replied. And hope, it turns out, was enough. Across the galaxy, in hundreds of homes on thousands of worlds, families gathered. Different species, different cultures, different biologies, but connected by something stronger than any difference. Connected by choice, by love, by the legacy of one old dragon who'd looked at two orphans and decided they were worth saving. The legacy of Forge lived on. Not in monuments or history books, though those existed too. It lived in every interspecies family that chose love over fear. In every child given a home regardless of what they looked like. In every bridge built between worlds that had been strangers. And somewhere, in whatever place old dragons go when they die, Forge watched his impossible family continue their work. Watched the galaxy become a little kinder, a little more open, a little more willing to see past differences to the beings underneath. He had been lonely once, lost in grief and isolation. But he'd found purpose in two small orphans, and through them, he'd given the galaxy a gift. The knowledge that family has no boundaries, that love recognizes no species, that an old dragon and two children working together could change everything. The story ended not with death, but with continuation. Not with closure, but with possibility, because the best legacies don't end, they grow, spreading like light through darkness, warming everything they touch. Just like Forge had warmed two orphans on a cold night in the scorched wastes all those years ago. And the light carried forward, generation after generation, family after impossible family, proving over and over that he'd been right all along. Love was enough. It was always enough.